Honor mode just recently came out and I'm having a blast with it. Unfortunately, I live in deep fear of all the bosses not knowing what I'm gonna go up against. So I went and compiled all the changes I and the community could find on bosses. Before I mention any boss changes, I did want to briefly mention an undocumented change you might not have noticed, and that's while hasted, your extra action no longer gives an extra attack, which is a huge nerf for some builds. This makes it much more worthwhile to use things like scrolls instead with your action. It's not necessarily a boss change, but it's knowledge that'll help you in your boss fights. And with all that out of the way, let's actually get into the boss changes themselves. First up is Auntie Ethel. A lot of bosses can no longer be shoved into a pit for an insta-kill, so keep this in mind going forward. Auntie has a legendary action Weird Magic Surge, which whenever you cast a spell, Auntie will make illusory copies depending on the spell's level. She still isn't very strong aside from this, so just burst the original down. Next up is the Owlbear. Aside from her usual rage, after taking enough damage, she'll call her consort into battle. The Owlbear mate has similar stats to the mother and can similarly rage after the Owlbear mother dies or after the father reaches low enough HP. You'll most likely want to recruit the 2 absolute cultists to help out with this fight to act as cannon fodder. Next we have the Phase Spider Matriarch, who has the legendary action Gossamer Tomb. After attacking her offspring, she'll encase the attacker in a Gossamer Tomb, which hold persons you, and unless removed with acid or fire, does 8d10 damage. So if you're gonna attack the offspring, preferably be burning beforehand. Similar to Auntie Ethel, you can no longer throw the spider in the pit, but you can still break the webs to inflict fall damage. In the Underdark is the Bulette, who is supposed to have a legendary ability called Shredding Scales and a new passive called Diamond Scales. These both give defensive and offensive capabilities to the Bulette. Unfortunately, I was unable to find this in-game, and other users similarly reported no such actions, so let me know in the comments if you have a similar issue. Nere, on the other hand, has a functioning legendary action with Psionic Visage, where he uses after taking damage. It gives him 3 copies which grant immunity to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Additionally, after striking him while he has his copies, you'll detonate, taking 2d6 psychic damage and 1 visage will be removed. Something to note is the damage you take applies in an area affecting all nearby creatures, enemies included. Big Boy Grym is next and has Adamantine Reverberation, granting 10 temporary HP and double movement speed. After his temp HP is removed, a shockwave is sent out, dealing 48 thunder in a radius. When hitting Grym with a hammer, more methods seem to spawn on the opposite side of the platform. I also noticed the lava didn't go away after 3 turns, instead sticking around the entire fight. I'm unsure if this is an honor mode change or just a general change, so be sure to let me know. Last in Act 1 is Wargaz, who after being hit can summon a Mind Claw of Tunarath, which is a summoned weapon that can create a Mind Steel link with targets. Wargaz gets 2 charges per turn, and there doesn't seem to be a limit to how many he can create to try to end the combat as soon as possible. Act 2 is up, so let's get right into it, starting off with the Thorms. First up is Malice. When attacked, each assistant will cast Wail of Loss, which will confuse you if you're nearby. Malice also has a legendary reaction called the Grasping Appendage, which pulls a creature 9 meters closer as a bonus action. This is really weak compared to most legendary actions, so if you fail the dialogue, don't fret. Next is Thisobald, who has the Overflowing Brew legendary action, which deals 3d6 damage in a radius of the appropriate element, and giving surrounding enemies an extra d6 damage of their respective damage type. So when fighting Thisobald, be sure to only use elemental damage at a distance. Something to note is if hit with force damage, the AoE buff to his allies is a strength score increase of 5, so look out, I guess. Gerringothe Thorm, after losing a piece of armor, attempts to turn you and your allies into gold, which is the equivalent of the Flesh to Gold spell. I recommend if you fight her to just shove her off the ledge and deal with her like that, though otherwise just stay out of range of her since it only has a 4 meter range. Unfortunately, past this point, I have limited footage since I had lost my run around here, so any changes from this point I had found on the Baldur's Gate 3 Wiki and Reddit. One post used for my research was from Phantom Split, so thanks to them and the community for chipping in. I'll link the Reddit post in the description. Owlbear has a legendary action to envelop the area in darkness, dealing damage and silencing. He also summons an additional Owlbear shadow minion, but if you're anything like me, I just did the fight on the nearby rooftop. Yurgir has the ability Blinding Ambush, which as a reaction to a hunter-inflicted ally attacking, attacks them in response, dealing 5d10 radiant and possibly blinding. This is a normal attack, so if you have high enough armor class or can cause disadvantage, it'll lessen the blow. Balthazar has the legendary action, the Dead Wastes, which can be cast on a dead creature, which heals nearby undead for 3d6 HP and deals 4d6 necrotic to living creatures. In addition, Balthazar can cast his legendary action Spectral Aspect after being hit, which gives him resistance to most damage types and immune to some, while also giving Bone Chill to those who attack him. I like to shove him off a cliff personally, or just make him fight the Sharan Onslaught. Next is Ketheric, who can cast Horde Strike, an action where he throws his hammer after a minion attacks an ally affected with deadly orders. This does 48 damage and can be used once every turn. Lastly is Myrkul, who casts Gaze of Dead as a reaction to being hit. That's it, on to Act 3. Starting with Cazador, he can now once per round swarm an ally, knocking them backwards and dealing 8d12 force damage. Additionally, they'll receive the Swarm condition, dealing 48 piercing damage and healing Cazador for 48 HP per turn. Cazador is still weak to sunlight, so just make some beforehand if you have the option. Viconia Devere, the Shar Temple leader, has a legendary action which essentially is a reaction sanctuary, which has the caveat of only lasting 2 turns, as well as allowing a Viconia herself to use her other action to Heart Wrench during it. This does 10d12 psychic damage whenever a heart-formed ally attacks. She can cast Sanctuary of Loss either on herself or one of her allies every round. Sarevok Anchev has the action Murderous Retort, which allows him to immediately attack when attacked. Additionally, if he has the Deathbringer's Legacy passive, he can instead attack with his Deathbringer's Assault, which you don't want to happen. Don't think you can escape with range since he'll teleport to attack you. Raphael has 2 legendary actions. Firstly, he has an advanced form of Charm, Beguile. He has 4 charges of Beguile, which guards Raphael for 2 turns. This is a Wisdom save, so it's best to use your Wisdom-focused characters to burn through his stacks beforehand. Do note after attacking his Soul Pillars, he'll have less charges of Beguile, so even more reason to focus them first. Raphael additionally can cast Soul Ascension, which is a wall of necrotic damage, dealing 6d10, and additionally transforming nearby Cambrians into Hellfire Cambrians, which do Hellfire damage, bypassing immunity and resistance. Even more reason to leave Raphael himself for last. Orin in Slayer form has an ability to attack in a 4-foot cone, dealing 8d8 slashing, bleeding, and knocking back nearby creatures. She also has Baal's Edict, forcing the character to literally kill or be killed. If you don't kill another creature on your turn, they die instantly. Kaput! If you instead fight her in the Dirge storyline, she gets Sarevok's legendary action where she can attack immediately as a retort. Gortash has the action Tyrannical Branding, which places a Tyrant's Curse on the user. This deals 20d10 force damage at the end of a creature's next turn unless the curse is removed. Remove curse will do the job here, though you can additionally consider phasing out of existence to avoid the damage. The Tyrannical Curse will also buff nearby Baneates though, giving an additional action and advantage, so it might be worth just to remove the curse instead. The Mystic Carrion has an ability Torrential Undeath, which unleashes a barrage of spiritual energy, granting undead guardian wraiths while haunting other creatures with wrathful spirits. Guardian Wraiths heals nearby undead for 6d8 and make them immune to all damage, while Wrathful Spirits make you frightened and also make you immune to all damage. You can cast this ability at any point within 60 feet, and the ability itself has a 10-foot radius, so either stick with the undead or stay apart from them. Next is Ansur, and other than his usual legendary action, he additionally has Unrelenting Storm. After being brought down to 0 HP, instead he'll start hoarding energy and gain 100 temporary HP. He'll do a damaging Nova after charging and return to 1 HP, so be careful not to wipe at the end and you'll be fine. Lastly, the Netherbrain has the ability Aegis of the Absolute. After damaging it for a turn, it'll become immune to any damage types you used until its next turn, so be sure to vary your damage types when fighting the Netherbrain and you should similarly be fine. Orbs of Negation and Mind Broken are unchanged, so the same strategy for avoiding those applies. I believe that's all changes to bosses, at least that's the ones I could find, so if I missed any be sure to comment below. I'll include anything I missed in a pinned comment. I hope to see you all next time.